Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the latest reports of senior Tory MPs' fears that many more of their MPs are going to stand down ahead of the next general election. This is going to create a significant problem for them. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So there are already over 40 Conservative MPs who've announced that they're not going to fight the next election, including some fairly big names: Sajid Javid, Dominic Raab, Sir Graham Brady, Matt Hancock. Some of them are at retirement age anyway, and although some MPs tend to carry on until their bones turn to dust, there's nothing really unusual about someone retiring into their 60s. There's also the odd resignation due to the grind of parliamentary life. You get this. By all accounts, life in Westminster is, fairly uninspiring for those with any sanity left. And it takes a supreme effort of will to put up with the ridiculous behaviour of the privately educated children who bounce around. Last year when Keir Starmer was being asked where does he prefer to be, Westminster or Davos, he just said Davos. And it wasn't the particularly... was a huge fan of Davos. It was just, he was making the point, Westminster's horrible. It's an absolutely terrible environment full of people who don't actually want to make anything happen. But with already dozens of Tory MPs announcing that they're stepping down, and there are many, many more thoughts to be doing so when the call goes out for the election. See, there's something more to it. Some know that their seat's going to be lost. Now, an election campaign is fairly grueling. It's pretty unpleasant. And the motivation to fight it when your only reward is going to be having your arse handed to you at 3 o'clock in the morning is going to be hard to find. Particularly as you, by definition, if you're an MP, won the last time you had to fight that seat. But there will be a lot of Conservatives standing down in tight contests as well. These are winnable. And this is a huge problem for the Conservatives, because right now, whenever you see election forecasts, it's based on voting intention polls. Now, part of that intention may be because, oh, no, I still support the Conservatives. Oh, it may be that they still prefer the Conservatives to Labour or something like that. Or it may be because they approve of their local candidates, their local MP. But each individual result doesn't actually take account of the candidate who will be fighting the next constituency. It's just based on that national mood. Most MPs do attend to their constituency work diligently. We can imagine there are some Tory MPs who have a bit of a toxic legacy, but many of them actually will be fairly well thought of in their local area, even Tory MPs. Now, you do often find that, if, for example, like me, you're on the left and you want to contact your local Tory MP about a government policy, and you go, I don't agree with this for these reasons, you might get quite a snippy response going, don't be ridiculous, you don't understand, go away. But when you want their help as an MP on something where political ideology doesn't come into it, most of them actually will do it, and they'll do it quite happily. Bear in mind as well that even when you are talking about certain policy areas, the voters who voted for them are sort of attuned to those things anyway. They agree with them. That's why they voted for them. So an MP who has a presence in the local constituency, who runs their surgeries, who supports local initiatives, will gain a lot of respect locally. For example, just recently, I've noted that Andrea Jenkins has been boasting on Twitter about putting on surgeries. Now, I've not seen this in the previous few years. There may be MPs who advertise their surgeries on Twitter, but they may do so consistently. This is new from Jenkins. She's not done it before, really, as far as I can tell. She certainly hasn't been making as much of a meal about it as she has recently. And then I thought to myself, so has she only just started doing the surgeries? Or is it that she always was doing them, but because only so many people turn up to a surgery, she's now promoting them because she wants everyone to know that she's putting these things on? Either way, she has decided that there is value in people seeing that she's doing work in her local area. She understands that value of a local MP being seen to be doing their constituency work, and she's thinking to herself, I need value because I want to win the next election, or at least want to win my seat. So a well-respected local candidate adds value. There are voters who may be angry at the national government, absolutely furious at Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson or Liz Truss, and would be absolutely ready for a change. Had enough of these clowns, we need a new government. Oh, but my MP is doing a good job. If only the rest of the party were like them, things would be all right. So I'll vote Tory for my MP, knowing that the rest of the country is going to basically vote a Labour government in. And it'll be fine, we'll have a Labour government, but I'll still have my good MP. So even if they might otherwise switch to Labour or the Lib Dems at the next election, they'll vote Tory on this occasion. So you can see where this is going, can't you? What if the Conservatives suddenly find that way more than just 40 odd of their MPs are stepping down? Many more than usual. Many of them will be active in their constituencies. They don't all disappear off to the crickets like Jacob Rees-Mogg on a working day. When they're not needed in Parliament, most of them will be back in their constituencies, dealing with problems, promoting local initiatives, canvassing opinion. Now imagine that they're no longer standing and a new candidate has been selected by the party. Well, you're a swing voter who was really happy with your Tory MP, but you're not happy with the Tory party in government. You've no idea between the Conservative or Labour candidate who will be the best local MP, because they're both untested and they're both claiming that they're going to work really hard. Sure, the current MP, the one you like, they're going to be endorsing the Tory candidate, but they would do that, wouldn't they? So presented with candidates who are untested as MPs, so you've got no idea which one will do the best work locally, a swing voter is much more likely to use their vote for the national outlook. Which party do they want to see in government? And this could mean the difference between winning and losing in several marginal constituencies. And if the MPs retiring largely announce it at the same time, just ahead of the general election being called, it doesn't really give the party long to select new candidates. There is the risk of cock-ups and ended up with some candidates who, with more careful vetting, would be discovered to have been raging skip fires on social media. The Tories are already drowning in sleaze, just as they were in the late 90s, only even more seriously this time. The last thing they'll need is a media focus on the shady past of some candidates involved in tight contests. CCHQ, Conservative headquarters, were asking last year for Tory MPs, saying to them, look, if you're going to stand down ahead of the next election, can you tell us now, please? Can we find out sooner rather than later? And some did. Hence the dozens who've already announced that they're stepping down. But the reason they pushed for them all to basically say, can you say now, please, was to give themselves time to carefully select the best candidates, because this will cost them even more seats. Mind you, I must just mention something. So I did suggest earlier, life in Westminster reportedly can be pretty unpleasant unless you've got very, very thick skin, and it can cause MPs to retire earlier than would otherwise be the case. But I was reading an article in The Guardian on this, and it cites the same sentiments. I'll give you one quote. You shouldn't underestimate the extent to which being an MP has become not particularly pleasant. Now, I want to note the exact wording there. Has become not particularly pleasant. See, earlier I was alluding to just the general poor behaviour in Parliament that could grind down the optimism of MPs who become disillusioned by the behaviour. The thing that's been in politics for decades, probably generations, probably forever. Whoever said this is talking about a new level of unpleasantness. Now, this has been noted. We've seen this. We've seen this toxic behaviour. We saw, for example, in 2019 for a period, police had to escort MPs out of Parliament for fear of violence, for fear of attacks. And who was stoking it? It is the Tory Brexiteers who introduced it. So although I have sympathy for any keen MPs of any party, including Conservatives, who become disheartened by the usual boorish antics of some MPs who exist in all parties, who think far too highly of themselves, not enough of the public, I have no sympathy for any Tory MP ground down by the toxicity of the Brexiteers, because two reasons. First, it is 100% from their own side. And second, it was on full display before they ever became a Conservative Party candidate in 2019, if you're talking about the new crop. Why didn't they stand up to them? Why didn't they stand up to them? Now, in the vast majority of cases, the reason they're stepping down isn't because it's a good time to retire, that's the case for some, or because they're burnt out, that will be the case for some, or even because they're not up for another campaign. The reason most will be stepping down is because they became MPs and entered Parliament straight onto the government benches. They weren't part of the crop that had to put up with opposition and get their party fit for government again. These were ones who became MPs straight onto the government benches. They don't fancy being on the opposition side of the house. The vast majority, over 3/4, sorry, I think over 3/4 of all MPs across the House in all parties were elected in or after 2010, which means they all did so into a Conservative government. So if they were Tory MPs, they did so straight into government, which means there are very few Tory MPs who've actually done their time in opposition. And when these Tory MPs are seeing that it's not just an immediate future on the opposition benches, but the long future, they're there for the long term now. They may even imagine that even if they stuck it out, they would be ready for retirement before their party's ready for government again. So they'll be seeing a future where the rest of their parliamentary career, unless they're quite young, is going to be on the opposition benches, and that's all there is to it. And you can't actually bring changes in as an opposition MP. You can work hard for your constituency. You can work hard holding the new government to account as a shadow minister or on a select committee. But all of these roles are in service of the people, of the public. If you're not interested in that, you don't get anything out of it other than the salary. No company wants to pay you £10,000 an hour for advice, because what they're really paying you for is government contacts, and you don't have any. That's why there will be a much greater proportion of Tory MPs stepping down than for any other party. They'll come out with reasons to garner sympathy, and some of them will be true, but in many cases, no. It's because they don't want to be in opposition. So they will have the largest proportion of MPs stepping down. Obviously, apart from the Green Party, a bit of a statistical outlier there, because 100% of their MPs are stepping down, but that's because they've got one. Bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, really, isn't it? Tory MPs see life in opposition, or losing their seat, and decide they can't be bothered. But by stepping down, they make this reality more likely because the party loses their local appeal premium. This is just another factor, which means that although you might, you look at the polls and you'll think, well, there'll probably be some tightening during the actual election campaign. There usually is. Not enough to save them, though. Things like this reduce the likelihood of that. It's hard to overstate the importance of an MP who has built up respect in their constituency, because it gathers extra votes, sometimes thousands. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.